The building was designed to hold silence. Attica Correctional Facility sat in rural western New York, surrounded by open land, far from cities, far from witnesses, thick concrete walls, narrow windows, long corridors that swallowed sound. By September 1971, more than 2,200 men were incarcerated there. Many were serving long sentences. Some would never leave. The prison was overcrowded. Cells built for one often held two, sometimes three. Daily life moved by routine. Morning count, meals, work assignments, lock-in. The rules were rigid. The punishments were arbitrary. Mail was censored. Medical care was slow or non-existent. Inmates earned pennies per day. Showers were limited. Toilet paper was rationed. None of this was new. What was new was exhaustion. For months, prisoners had filed complaints through official channels. They asked for basic changes: religious freedom, better food, access to education, an end to beatings. The requests disappeared into administration. The prison was racially divided. Most inmates were black or Latino. Almost every correctional officer was white. That imbalance sat quietly beneath every interaction. The guards were not cruel caricatures. Many were working-class men from nearby towns. They followed orders. They enforced rules written far above them. But they held absolute control. Until they didn't. On the morning of September 9, 1971, a routine escort went wrong. A gate was open at the wrong time. A confrontation escalated. A group of inmates rushed a corridor. It was not planned. It was not coordinated. It spread anyway. Keys were taken. Guards were overpowered. Control rooms were breached. Within minutes, a large section of the prison was lost. Correctional officers ran. Some barricaded themselves. Others were surrounded. 42 staff members, guards and civilian employees, were taken hostage. They were not harmed. They were brought into the prison yard, watched, guarded, alive. The inmates quickly realized what they had: leverage. They organized themselves. Leaders emerged. Order was imposed. Knives were collected. Rules were set. Anyone who threatened a hostage would be stopped by other inmates. The yard became its own world. Demands were written down. They were specific: medical care, fair wages, an end to physical abuse, access to education, religious freedom, and amnesty. Amnesty was a line that would never be crossed. Negotiators arrived from the state. Observers were invited inside: lawyers, journalists, civil rights activists. Among them was William Kunstler. The hostages were brought forward. They spoke into microphones. They confirmed they were alive. Some said they felt safer in the yard than they had during the initial chaos. Outside the walls, cameras rolled. Inside, time stretched. The inmates waited for answers. The guards waited to see if they would be used as examples. The state waited for patience to run out. Negotiations dragged on for 4 days. Food was shared. Medical care was improvised. Prisoners slept in shifts. Nobody truly rested. Above all of it was uncertainty, because no one knew what decision had already been made. By the morning of September 13, 1971, negotiations were functionally over. Governor Nelson Rockefeller had refused to come to Attica. He rejected further concessions. He authorized the prison to be retaken by force. Shortly before 9:50 a.m., helicopters appeared above the yard. They dropped tear gas. Visibility collapsed instantly. Men coughed. Eyes burned. People ran into each other blindly. Hostages fell to the ground, choking, unable to see who was near them. Seconds later, gunfire erupted. State troopers, corrections officers, and sheriff's deputies stormed the prison from multiple points. They fired shotguns and rifles into the gas-filled yard. There was no clear target. There was no warning. There was no restraint. The shooting lasted only minutes. When it stopped, the yard was silent again. 43 men were dead, 33 inmates, 10 hostages. In the hours that followed, the state released its version of events. Officials claimed inmates had murdered the hostages by slitting their throats before police entered. Newspapers printed the claim without verification. The image was horrifying. Public outrage turned instantly toward the prisoners. The story was false. Autopsies later revealed that every single person who died at Attica was killed by gunfire from law enforcement. None of the hostages had been stabbed. Several were hit by multiple bullets. This truth emerged slowly, through medical examiners, through leaked reports, through court testimony. By the time it was acknowledged, the damage was permanent. Inside the prison, violence continued after the retaking. Survivors described systematic abuse. Inmates were forced to strip naked. They were beaten with batons. Some were burned with cigarettes. Others were denied medical care for gunshot wounds. Threats of execution were common. These accounts were initially dismissed. Then evidence accumulated. Doctors confirmed untreated injuries. Photographs documented bruises and fractures. Independent witnesses corroborated inmate testimony. The state denied responsibility. An investigation followed. The McKay Commission concluded that the state had used excessive force, spread false information, and failed at the highest levels of leadership. No state trooper was convicted for the killings. Inmates were prosecuted aggressively. Many cases collapsed years later. Some men spent years fighting charges that were ultimately dismissed. Civil lawsuits dragged on for decades. In 2000, New York State settled with surviving inmates. In 2005, families of the slain hostages received settlements. No admission of wrongdoing. Attica reopened. Routine returned. But the meaning of Attica never faded. It became shorthand, a warning, a reminder of what happens when power stops listening and fear becomes policy. The hostages who survived later spoke with conflicted voices. Many acknowledged that inmates had protected them during the standoff. Some said they believed the retaking was more dangerous than the uprising itself. The prison still stands. The yard looks ordinary. Concrete, fence lines, nothing that announces what happened there. But the records remain. Not dramatic, not comforting, just heavy, because that night was not chaos. It was a decision, and the truth arrived last.